Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to our play-by-email game in War in the Pacific Admirals Edition against XTRG. It is February 3rd of 1942, the Japanese offensive in the Pacific is continuing, and we've got a pretty interesting turn on our hands in this case. There's a lot that's going on, there is some positives, there are some negatives. It's a pretty action-packed turn, in a way that a lot of the turns recently haven't been, so I'm pretty excited to share this with you. I have looked at the results, but there's a lot of activity all around, and we're just going to jump right into it. So first things first, Japanese dropping depth charges on a Dutch sub here off the coast of Miri. I probably need to move those subs there. We've got a line of subs off Miri that are all intending to intercept any tanker convoys if he ever brings them around, but instead they're just acting as ASW targets, and he knows they're there, so... Same is the truth of the SS Trout, the USS Trout, which is operating off of Tohara, which again, you can see large numbers of Japanese anti-submarine craft attacking it. Meanwhile, the S-37, the S-boat off the coast of Kendari, fires some torpedoes at the Yamagata. Unfortunately, both of those torpedoes missed, and no damage is done, although I think the S-37 did sink a Japanese cargo ship last turn. Meanwhile, a Dutch submarine here launching torpedoes against an APD, an armed... I don't even know what these are. They're basically destroyers that are modified to be better at troop transports. And he had used them in his landings at Maskar. He had also used them in his landings at Ambion very heavily. And they lost a lot of damage to the coastal guns there. But again, they're kind of warship landing craft, so they're uniquely effective at that. Although they're not, perfect, obviously. Also, because they are kind of like converted destroyers, I think, they are better at attacking submarines than some other ships. And you can see here, he's going after this Dutch sub, claims 6 hits. We'll have to take a look at what that really looks like once we're out of the turn. Okay. Alright, so more landings along the New Guinea coast. A slew of them. And we're not really trying to resist. We just don't have the strength to resist them there. Our one strong point on New Guinea is intended to be Port Moresby. It's not going to be super strong. I can't bring a full division in or anything like that. But the terrain should help us hold against a larger force. Maybe in a bit of a no Maya type experience, but we'll see. Meanwhile, landings on Gassama, or whatever that base is to the west of Rabaul on New Britain, and more submarine actions here off Manadao, another Dutch submarine firing torpedoes at a Japanese destroyer. I'd prefer you shoot at merchant ships, but I guess if that's all you got, then you're going to shoot at a target you're not going to hit. Meanwhile, we're into the air operation phase, so we're going to see how this plays out. He's been bombing Bataan somewhat regularly, in Singapore pretty regularly. He's also been bombing Changsha from time to time. And we'll see if anything else happens beyond that. Additionally, Japanese carrier aircraft are detecting our tanker convoys here off of Carnarvon and to the west of Carnarvon. So it does look like the Japanese do have the mini Kidubutai here to the northwestern coast of Australia, which is pretty ballsy, but also not super unexpected. The good news is I think my tankers are scattering pretty effectively to ward off more than a handful of tankers being sunk. I know I've got one tanker in there that's really not worth anything at all. It's like 4 victory points. It's like an 1800 cargo tanker. That's in the rear of our columns. We also have a couple of tankers, I think, that are going to Carnarvon here to unlimber, if you will, or to kind of get into the port. He could probably do like 60 XP worth of damage by sinking all of the subs in that area, which would suck and would hinder our fuel maneuvering capabilities, but not in a serious way. Meanwhile, we've got some G3M2 Nels bombing our mine layers here off the coast of Palembang. So it's the first air raid, I think, on Palembang. No fighter escorts intercepted the Palembang. He did have 21 Zeros escorting his bombers, so we'll see how that plays out. So basically just wasting weapons and torpedoes on tiny ships like speedboats that probably are worth less than the weapons he is actually dropping. But anyway, it's kind of like an American bombing of the Ho Chi Minh Trail in some ways. Meanwhile, we are seeing fighter sweeps over Rangoon for the first time. We intentionally stood down all of our aircraft at Rangoon to avoid a large-scale fighter sweep. We hit some of his bombers there last turn, so I made the assumption that he would send fighters in without bombers this turn and had all of my fighters stand down. So far, that looks like it's the right decision with those 7 Oscars flying over there. If that's all he sends, I kind of wish I had tried to ambush him, but we'll see if that's all he sends. Meanwhile, 87 bombers, Sally's and Suning dive bombers here are hitting Changsha. That's one of his largest and most coordinated raids so far. He did lose 5 aircraft flak, at least damaged, not destroyed. We did have a modest amount of troops that are disabled, 5 squads disabled, 10 non-combatants, no engineers lost, 148 men, and some recon over Changsha as well. Bataan getting bombed by Lilies and Nates. We did damage 3 Lilies and destroyed 1 via flak, so we're going to chew through our supply there again. We've got some Ans and Lilies also going in here in a second raid. 6 more Ans, 1 Ida, and 1 Lily damaged again at Bataan. Again, all those bombing raids really are going to eat up our supply. Another 19 Sally's hitting Changsha in a second raid here. Another 57 soldiers disabled, another 5 squads disabled. 20 unescorted Lilies are flying over Singapore. It looks like he thinks we completely evacuated all of our fighters in the region, but guess what? I have some fighters still at Djabi, some Dutch fighters, about 20 Buffaloes, and I think next turn we may fly some cap over Singapore with them. In the event he sends more bombers, we might be able to get a couple of easy kills. Yeah, they're crappy aircraft, but against unescorted bombers? Yes, thank you. Japanese Oscars flying a sweep over Koh Pang. Where the hell did he base them from? They came from way out over here. He doesn't have any bases over here, so I don't know where those came from. They probably had to come from Mascar, I guess I would guess. So it looks like he does have some army fighters in the region, which is going to dramatically change our ability to move supplies and weapons and other things by sea. Basically, it kind of closes Java to us. Oosthaven's probably still open, but Java certainly is closed to us now. Meanwhile, the carrier aircraft here are striking at Carnarvon. They've got 4 B-5N1 Kates trying to drop bombs on a Dutch destroyer there. The Dutch destroyer manages to avoid all the bombs. 6 B-5N1 Kates dropping bombs here on the tanker Iris here to the west of Carnarvon. The Iris is a really kind of a worthless tanker. It carries a total of 1,800 fuel, so not very much. They are hitting the corvette time, however. British corvettes are worth quite a lot, so the fact that we lost this one, I mean, it's only worth 4 victory points, but in terms of their anti-submarine capabilities, these things are pretty damn precious. We've got a bunch of them, but it still sucks to lose one. Okay. J Street, by the way, thank you for the bits. And like a G-Man as well, thank you also for the bits. And thank you to the 8 subscribers that the channel currently has. I do appreciate your support. I can't remember if Twitch is still running the half-off paid subs or not. Meanwhile, you can see here they're doing some recon over Carnarvon. They're detecting tankers here. It'll be interesting to see next turn if he actually makes a play at anything that manages to port itself, or if he can destroy some of this before the turn is up. Well, if half-off paid subs end in 2 or 3 hours, spend your money and sub to the Historical Gamer. You will get unlimited amounts of singing, of jovial times, of drinking scotch, and just, all told, good times. It's the Historical Gamer. Subscribe your way to history, from Gettysburg to Tripoli, the Historical Gamer. All right, so more Japanese torpedo bombers are going. Oh, I thought they already sank the Iris, but apparently a second raid of 4 Kates is necessary. And now she sinks. 4 more bomb hits. No torpedoes. That's telling enough that I think he may have used almost all of his torpedoes up in his raids of the other ships on the way here. He might have a few left, and he's intentionally not using them. I'm not sure. In any event, the TK Iris bombs. 4 more hit, and I'm assuming she sinks. 6 B-5N1 Kates are going against the tender ship AVP Pollux, which I raced north mainly as a decoy in an effort to close with the Japanese carriers if they were in the area. And, yeah, they dropped 6 bombs on it and did nothing. So huzzah! Thank you for the bits, J Street. Tip for singing. I think I did a better job singing that time around. I think it sounded better. S-37 is more anti-submarine stuff. More anti-submarine stuff than the S-37. 4 hits. S-37, more anti-submarine stuff. They really want to search and find that guy. Hey, look, there's the S-37 again. A bunch more depth charges, 6 more hits. Hopefully she doesn't sink. More amphibious landings here as we kind of move into the PM phase. And, whoa, this is the big one. This is the big show. The Japanese have launched a deliberate attack at Changsha. As you remember, we have over 5,000 assault value at the base at Changsha. It is a level 5 fortification, our most heavily fortified city in the entire map, our most, at least in terms of anything near the front line. Pearl Harbor or something like that might be more heavily fortified. But Changsha is the most heavily fortified city in the map that I'm aware of. We have over 5,000 assault value, over 200,000 men based at Changsha. He has brought a similar number of troops and assault value here to bear. A large number of engineers will probably reduce the fortifications, but essentially this is a major battle. This is a battle similar to some of the early war battles in China, battle for Shanghai, or Shanghai, other things like that. And this is going to be very, very bloody as we take a look at the results here. Hopefully, we will hold our own against the Japanese and give them a serious bloody nose. He does have the potential of crippling our forces in Central and South China beyond any feasible ability to resist if he succeeds. I think it's unlikely he'll succeed. He did a very poor job of, I think, softening us up. I think he rushed this attack a little bit more. He really should have waited. If you looked at the bombardments, he was losing more men in the bombardments of Changsha than we were, which says he doesn't have sufficient force participating in the bombardment. He was making the mistake of only bombarding with his artillery units, ignoring all the guns that his army units did. And the reason is he doesn't want the counter battery to take out his infantry units. The problem is he didn't have enough artillery units to really suppress our troops. Additionally, we're in level 5 fortifications, which make bombardments incredibly less effective. There's this almost like a watershed moment when you move from 4 to 5 from a fortification perspective where things just change dramatically. And just frankly, he didn't wait long enough. He needed to bring more aircraft. He needed to hit as hard. He did a good job this turn. He disabled over 200 men. He needed to do that probably for 2-3 more weeks, but I don't think he had the patience to do that. And as a result, he may end up succeeding in Changsha in the long run, but it's going to be far more bloody and far more costly than it could have been if he had said, listen, this is only needs to be done by the end of 1942. If my goal is to win the war in 1942 via an auto victory or a victory point victory, then I can't take a ton of casualties. What I should really do is I should spend a month to reduce Changsha effectively. In March, you start the attacks. By April, you take the city at minimal loss. So bombard all through February, maybe your first initial couple deliberate attacks in the beginning of the next month, and then you really launch the assaults as the supplies dwindle, and you either crush the Chinese and then rapidly take the rest of southern and central China at pretty low cost, or you, you take the city less costly as the Chinese pull back, and then you kind of progress on from there. But we'll see what the results are here. It's a very long land battle. It takes a long time for the results to go through. I hear the machine guns firing in the night. We should be playing like Queen. Dun, dun, dun. Another Japanese soldier bites the dust. Out through the door, the bullets rip. Machine guns ready to go. No, he cannot. These rivers are not... I don't think he can use the rivers to land troops behind me. Even if he does, I own both of these bases here. I don't think he'd have anywhere near... He wouldn't be able to carry troops large enough to land and take these bases, because each of these bases has about 1,000 assault value points behind them as well. So my intent here is to hold at Changsha long enough, to get these cities to level 4 fortifications and then fall back. The only reason I didn't do that right away is Changsha is a level 5, and he could flank me to the north with this roadway here and kind of get in behind us. So Changsha is a better defensive point to prevent him from being able to do that. Meanwhile, as I predicted, the engineers did reduce the forts from level 5 to level 4. The good news for us is that, or actually the bad news for us, is that the reduction of the fortification was done before the calculation of the assault value. So this would have been even more bloody if he didn't have the engineers to reduce the fortifications. As a result, the following results that you're going to see are the Japanese with 7,400 assault value, 215,246 troops, 2,422 guns, 2,197 vehicles, attacking defending Chinese forces of 174,041 men, 913 guns, and 0 vehicles. 7,476 assault value, attacking 5,000. The engineers reduced the fortifications to level 4, which means when you adjust the assault value, the Japanese have an assault value of 3,526. The Chinese assault value is 10,561, due again to the level 4 fortification bonus, which then means that the assault odds are 1 to 2 at fort level 1, which means the Japanese attack fails to reduce the fortifications further as a result of the attack. The combat modifiers here, the defender gets a modifier for terrain, that's a positive. They get a modifier for forts, that's a positive. They get a modifier for leaders because we replaced some of our leaders there. They do get a ding for preparation. The attackers have no benefits, no bonuses, no terrain, no forts, no leaders, no preparation, nothing. So his leaders aren't good enough, and he hasn't done enough preparation to actually have a bonus for this attack. Again, those could have changed things. As we scroll down here, bloody! The river in Changsha runs red with the blood of Japanese soldiers. 16,862 Japanese soldiers are casualties. That's big. What's bigger is 352 Japanese infantry squads are destroyed. That is 352 victory points for the Allied cause. 352 victory points. That is worth more than the USS Yorktown. That is worth more than a Japanese fleet carrier. That is worth more than the Haruna by nearly a factor of 2. This is a huge success for the defenders. It may not be a sustainable success, right? The losses that the Japanese suffer here, they do reduce the fortifications to 4. If they reduce them again to 3, this will all sort of even out. The Japanese are much more powerful than the Chinese in China. This is by no means a decisive defeat, but it is a bloody nose. And if XTRG is still trying to go for an auto victory in 1942, this is a big setback. A big setback. No mistake about that. Additionally, in terms of his ability to continue the assault, well, he lost 352 squads destroyed. He lost 2,811 squads disabled that he's going to need to pour supplies over to get them back ready for fighting. He lost 9 non-combatants destroyed, 185 disabled. He lost 73 engineer squads destroyed. 73 engineer squads destroyed. That is tremendously valuable. Another 417 disabled. That is a crushing blow to his engineer force. 119 of his 2,400 guns are disabled. 21 of those are destroyed, so he has to manufacture those in his home factories to replace them. 325 vehicles are destroyed, are disabled. 88 of them destroyed. Those are 88 more vehicles that his factories have to replace. They can do it. Make no mistake about it. The Japanese have the resources to replace all of these losses and make them good. But what it does mean is it does mean that this type of a loss, this type of a battle, where he doesn't even have these troops cut off on an island and they're going to be destroyed, is a drain on his economy because it prevents him from focusing too much on, oh, well, I should build more zeros, I should build more nels. Well, it's like, well, you can't do that at the expense of the land factories that need to eat up your supply and oil and fuel on all these other things as well. You have to continue producing large numbers of these land equipment, which, again, Japan can only build so much in the way of air units, ground units, all of these other things because it consumes resources, it consumes supply, consumes fuel to be able to do all of that. So again, this is just further drains on his resource pools, which ensure that he's not going to go like, oh, well, the war in China is going so well, I'm going to shift all my emphasis away from land units. That's just not the case. The Allies didn't lose nothing. We did lose 21 squads destroyed, 473 disabled. We lost 11 non-combatants and 57 disabled. Only 1 engineer squad was destroyed, which is a godsend because engineers are so vital to the Japanese or to the Chinese. We did lose 52 guns lost, 4 of those destroyed, 48 disabled. But remember, again, 1 squad destroyed for Japan is 1 victory point. 1 squad destroyed for China is 1/6 of a victory point. So if we actually just look at the infantry squads, that's 352 victory points for the Allies against just 3.5 victory points for the Japanese. So that's a pretty huge discrepancy, and that is a pretty big success, in my opinion, for the Allied forces. But with all of that said, with all of that emphasis, the turn is not over. So the Japanese launch another deliberate attack at Nomaya. It looks like they're bringing a full effort here. Tank regiments, mortar battalions, infantry regiments, field artillery regiments, naval guard units, all coming in to try and say, all right, guys, finally, we're going to try and snuff out the battling bastards of Nomaya. And if we fast forward here, they do reduce the fortification to level 0. They do gain 2-to-1 assault odds, but they don't destroy the base yet. The defenders are down to 3,550 men, 68 guns, 18 vehicles, against 11,150 troops, 209 guns, and 163 vehicles, 305 to 24. Even with the adjusted defense, 181 to 67. He did have a 2-to-1. He did reduce the fort level 1 to 0. He did do better in the combat. He lost 309 men to our 542. We lost 16 squads destroyed. He only lost 2. But every squad he loses destroyed is more victory points for us. That, you know what, I'm just going to bask in the, you know, we had assumed that this entire Allied force was lost from a victory point perspective like 2 weeks ago almost. And the fact that they've destroyed over 40 or 50 enemy squads since then is just 40 or 50 more victory points that go to our side. You can see here 16 squads destroyed, infantry, 13 non-combatants, 1 engineer, 4 guns. One of the defending units was actually destroyed in the combat, so they won't be around in the next turn. Nonetheless, he might be grinding us into pulp, but he's still taking more and more time. That is probably preventing him from driving further south into the South Pacific. Japanese shock attack at Nanning. You can see about 210 victory points or assault value attacking at Nanning here in western China. And that attack went well. They reduced the fortifications from 2-to-1. They gained 1-to-1 assault odds. They lost 1 squad, destroyed 62 casualties against 132 Allied squads, or 132 Allied casualties, almost all non-combatants. He'll take that base if I don't reinforce it. He does have a brigade and a regiment there. I may send reinforcements. It's not super centrally located to like our actual defensive line in southern China. It doesn't give him a roadway in toward our rear, so it probably is okay. Meanwhile, Kaving here north of New Britain does fall. We do lose some troops there, but again, that's one of those, hey, it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. 33 to 26. Sucks, but no big deal. Kopang is a Japanese infantry division here, or a portion of a Japanese infantry division being bombarded by our troops. We're also bombarding his brigade at Ambion. The Ambion bombardment did nothing. The Japanese are launching a deliberate attack at Kopang as well. This portion of the division does succeed in taking this base. This is a pretty big blow to us to lose this base. The best base on Western Timor is going to bring Northern Australia into the reach of Japanese bombers. It will bring naval ports like Darwin into range of Japanese bombers. And it will be a pain in the ass, no doubt, to lose this base. This is the best base in the South Banda Sea. But nonetheless, it was going to happen eventually. It was just a matter of time. Japanese committed about 1/4 of a division there, so of course it was going to happen. And it was bloody and it sucked. But you know, the real surprise, I think, is his decision to launch what in my opinion, was a premature attack at Changsha, and he got a real big bloody nose for doing that. The rest of the stuff is all just sort of, hey, in any game against the Japanese, this kind of stuff is going to happen, and that's to be expected. But I think that's the turn. So we're calculating spoilage, aircraft repair, supply, upgrading ships, upgrading air units. If we fast forward through this, we get a couple of cargo ships this turn, and I'm going to jump back into the game here. It's going to kick us out of our turn, I think. All right. It is February 4th of 1942. I think the big concern or question of what's going to happen is over here on the western coast of Australia. We can see here there's Japanese forces here, at least 3 escort carriers here to the northwest of Carnarvon, 25 fighters, 20 bombers, 6 auxiliaries. He sank 1 tanker, the Iris. He also sank 1 corvette. We have other ships in the vicinity. The AVB Pollux is kind of our decoy here. She's a tender ship that is not worth nothing. She's worth 3 victory points, but she's also not really worth a tanker. So we're sailing her north in the hope that the Japanese are dealing with her. Meanwhile, we are going to sacrifice the Dutch destroyer Witte de With and the minesweeper Jan van Armesel, and we're going to sail them out as well to try and intercept the Japanese here. Interestingly enough, it's 5-2. So we're going to sail these guys out in surface combat. We've given them a hyper-aggressive commander to see if maybe they'll like try and attack the Japanese carriers and maybe drive them back or at least draw on some enemy air attacks. Meanwhile, the tanker Pina, 12 speed, she's slow. She is worth 15 victory points, is going to try and race south toward Geraldton, mainly to draw enemy air attacks in. So she's going to run. We're going to have the AVP up here. We're going to have the surface task force. So these 3 surface task forces' objective is to draw Japanese fire. Meanwhile, we have another tanker up here in the north, the Seminarez, which is running toward Broome, hopefully away from Japanese efforts and intelligence. We also have 2 tankers at anchor here at Carnarvon, which again are both worth 50 victory points. It would really suck to lose like 6 tankers. That would be a big success for XTRG. We'd probably lose like 80 victory points if that happened. Would not be crippling in any way, but it would suck. Meanwhile, we've got other tankers here, 2 tankers here, 1 tanker here, and then we've got some cargo ships moving around, some tankers down here, actually 4 tankers down here, which are heading west toward Cape Town, just to get out of Dodge. So we're going to be basically sending all of these guys west here, way west of Australia, into the open sea, where hopefully he doesn't attack them. We're evacuating Perth for all intents and purposes. We're sending all these cargo ships out way toward Melbourne. We sent another task force out this way yet last turn, just in the event that he was in the area. We do have some ships that are at harbor in Perth. We've got some ships that are actually under repair, so a heavy cruiser, a light cruiser, and some destroyers. That kind of sucks if we do get those sunk, but at the end of the day, if he wants to sail all the way down here, we are building up an air armada in Perth. We've ordered 4 fighter squadrons to Perth, and so they're P-40 squadrons and their experience sucks, but if we can wipe out some Japanese air groups, they can shoot down Kates and other things like that. So if we can overwhelm his fighter escorts, we might be able to get some crazy kills against some really experienced Japanese dive bombers, which would be well worth the loss of a few ships and cruisers, to be honest. That's the situation in Perth. I'm also sending our surface task forces south. My hope is that his carriers have used most of their support up and they don't have a ton of like torpedoes or other things like that. If they don't have a lot of torpedoes, surface task forces might be able to close with them. I'm trying to send the Cornwall and the Exeter south here to cut off the rear of the Japanese escape, and my hope is that they use up all of their air attacks and support against our cargo ships, and maybe we can close to a gun battle and knock out a couple of carriers in a gun battle with our 2 heavy cruisers and 5 destroyers, 5 light cruisers and 1 destroyer. That's the hope anyway. Meanwhile, our carrier in the Hermes here is withdrawing to Java. She doesn't have enough fuel for that. We're going to have another task force meet up with her. We also have another carrier coming south here, the Indomitable, which does have 3 destroyers, escorts, and a battleship as well, but she's too far out of the action for the next few days to really do much. We could meet the Hermes up with her. That might not be a disastrous idea. I just don't know if they actually have the fuel to get there. Probably not. It's like, oh, you need to go all the way up there? Yeah, that's not going to happen. Maybe we can send the Indomitable. Because, again, he only has light carriers here. So if all he has is light carriers, that might actually be more... Let's do this. If all he has is light carriers, it might be worth trying to engage with the Indomitable. Especially if he doesn't have torpedoes, because the armored flight deck of the Indomitable can take quite a bit of punishment. So maybe we should meet up with the Hermes. The Hermes, I think, has 12 torpedoes, and we have another 12 or 20 on the Indomitable, so we could try and go after them with our carriers. It's a little bit of a long shot, but they're also not super valuable to us compared to the American carriers. By God, we're flanking him, says Jack. Lightfoot pilot training for the Allies is a little bit less important. I have a bunch of it going on the East Coast, but it's still way too early to pull anyone, unfortunately. Plus, it takes several days to replace pilots that are in squadrons across the world anyway. Did XTRG kneecap THG so he can't finish his turn, and XTRG would win by default? I'm not kneecapped, so by past tense, I don't know what you mean. Sim Caesar, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Meanwhile, another thing we saw was fighter sweeps over Rangoon. We have a lot of aircraft here. Let's hope he doesn't bomb, because I have 131 aircraft at Rangoon. A fair number of them are fighters, but I don't really want to engage with his superior Oscars at this time. So there's that. Yeah. Ooh, we got the thumbs up there. The flaming thumbs up from Sim Caesar. Thank you very much. Oh, kidnapped. Kidnapped? I thought you said kneecapped. Maybe it's just I'm still suffering post-traumatic stress from my Milwaukee Brewers star Christian Yelich having his knee fractured by a foul ball. Let's see here. Everybody else. Honestly, this was a really big turn, but there's not a lot that I'm doing this turn. We kind of showed you like where we're moving all these cargo ships here on the western coast of Australia. We showed that we're trying to move a surface task force in behind the Japanese carriers. We also showed that we have a fleet carrier and an escort carrier that may link up and may operate against the Japanese. But again, that kind of depends on him sticking around for a few more turns. I don't have... What is this? Southwest, an AM and a PC. Maybe he's going to land here at Tendabong? He'd need a bigger task force than that to take any of the meaningful bases. Oh, one other thing we're going to do. We have 39 aircraft here. Wonder if I can do an escort long-range cap set over Singapore. I don't know if they can fly the same turn that they just flew in. But in any event, so either we're going to have 31 fighters or we're just going to have 20 fighters of the B339Ds that are going to be flying about 13,000 feet over Singapore. The hope is that he bombs Singapore next turn, again with Lilies without any escort, and then we can have 20 to 30 fighters swoop in on his Lilies and savage his bombers. That's our hope. So if he really did move all his fighters north to try and reduce Rangoon or deal with Palembang or other bases, my hope is we can surprise him and do some damage. These Aerocobras need to get out of Singers. Get out of there. We're going to pull them back to Djambi. All right. And that's my hope. So we'll see. Meanwhile, I also have started evacuating. We had 180 fighters at Surabaya. Honestly, with Kopang falling, I don't want to get our amazing dive bomber Wildebeest caught in a vice. So I am pulling our Wildebeest out. So we're going to pull out about 20 about 20 propeller-based, they're all propeller-based. 20 biplanes are going to move into Latham this turn, and next turn they're going to move to Darwin to get out of any potential Japanese encirclement. I did see this other task force here, but it's moving west, and Dili also, or Tautum also does have some land-based forces here, so I'm thinking we've got at least one more turn before the vice closes to the south. Additionally, when it comes to evacuating these troops here on Java, I will probably send my air forces north now to Sumatra and then eventually to Rangoon, in the event that the Japanese do cut off our retreat to the south by their taking of the islands here north of the Timor Sea. My Blenheims have the range to bomb Bangkok. Yeah, but we got to assume that he's got a large number of fighters up over Bangkok. I don't want to just get my Blenheims shot to pieces for no real purpose. Let's see. We've got about 33 medium bombers, all Blenheims. No, they don't have the range. The Blenheim 1, anyway, does not have the range to attack. How many of our Blenheims are better than that? Most of our Blenheims are Blenheim 1s. We do have 8 Blenheim 4s. And, and the Hudsons. So the Hudsons can make it. That's 8 Hudsons and 8 Blenheim 1s. That's 16 bombers that can actually hit, or Blenheim 4s. 16 medium bombers can hit Bangkok. Additionally, we've got 9 heavy bombers that can hit Bangkok. So we can hit Bangkok with a total of 25 bombers. I don't think it's ready for that yet. Last turn, I don't remember seeing what the sweep was. I think it was 7 fighters. Might have been more than that. Yep, so that's the situation there. We have troops moving northeast of Pegu to try and attack this Thai division that we ravaged a couple of turns ago. I think the more interesting thing is Changsha. So if you remember, at the start of the turn last turn, Changsha had a defense value of about 5,100. So we lost about 500 assault value, which is considerable. That's like 2 full-size cores. But at the end of the day, nothing's really crippled. All of our troops have 100-plus attack value. Is the 79th? Can we rebuild it? Where's the other part of that? Some of it's at Shenyang. Lame. But in any event, we've still got about 4,600 assault value. We are down to a level 4 fort. The level 4 fort is trying to rebuild, but it's only at 5%. It's unlikely to ever get back to 5. The supplies were chewed through pretty heavily by that attack. If he launched another attack, we'd probably be in dire straits. We lost over 3,000 supply last turn. We had over 11,000 before. But the good thing is all of our units are still in good supply. None of these units are red from a supply perspective, but our ability to hang out here too much longer is pretty limited. Our requested supplies are 27,000. The actual amounts in the depot are 8,000. So supplies in Changsha are going to be a serious issue. The good thing is that at the moment they are not. Looks like he might be bringing more reinforcements. We've got some troops to the southwest, troops to the east. He could try and flank. He could try and do other things. But as a reminder, we haven't abandoned our other flanks. We've got about 600 assault value here at Henyang with level 3 forts, working on level 4. We have a little bit fewer troops, I think, here in the center. Actually, no more. 967 assault value here directly to the rear of Changsha. So that is, theoretically, we could send all those troops into Changsha and replace all of our losses. I have no desire to do that. The only thing is they only have level 1 forts there. Meanwhile, at Nanning, we only have a base force here defending, so we are sending a couple of corps here to the west to try and maybe catch the Japanese troops here to the west, these couple of brigades off guard, or even if they do take Nanning, maybe we can retake it with an overwhelming force of over 600, almost 700 assault value there. So that's what we're doing in China. If we look at Bataan, we did fire a bunch of AK, but we only used a little bit of supply. We still got 38,000 supply here. Everybody's in good supply. Everybody's in good spirits. Nothing wrong here, men. Just ignore the Japanese not that far away from you. Meanwhile, we do have a fast transport coming into Bataan with another 635 supply, the Zeeman, the patrol craft Zeeman. She's going to be sprinting into Bataan. Hopefully she can unload her cargo and get us closer to 39,000 supply, or at least buy us a free turn in terms of anti-aircraft fire being waged up. Meanwhile, as much as I would like to intercept his carriers in the Western Australian theater with my own, my carriers are a ways away. They're to the east of New Zealand. They are working their way toward New Zealand, but they're like a week and a half to 2 weeks away at least if I was to send them to his new base. So if we sent him along the south, more direct south route toward Australia, I think we could get to Perth in around 10 days. If we tried to go the north route to cut off his rear, we'd probably take about a week and a half to 2 weeks just to get to Kopang. 2, he's got a level 4 airfield at Kopang. He could throw a bunch of naval bombers in there. 3, even if he doesn't do that, surely he's going to have scout planes around here, which again would mean that our carriers would be detected, and he could dispatch the Kiributai to our rear while he dispatches the mini carrier Kiributai to our front, and he could catch us between 2 carrier forces. Not something I'm super enthused about or plan to do in any way. So we're not going to do that, and that's just that. Meanwhile, there's some logistics going on, but there's not a lot else going on this turn. If we look at information here, 2 air-to-air losses on our end, 2 operational losses on our end, 3 operational losses by the Japanese, 2 to flak, so 5 to 5, or 5 to 4, basically. If we go to aircraft losses here, it says 5 to 4. Aircraft loss, 2 Catalinas for us in air-to-air combat here over Kopang, 1 Lily, 1 Dino, 1 Sally, 1 Bab, 1 Kate, 1 Wildebeest, 1 Blenheim, all lost in operational. In terms of lost pilots, we lost none killed, so that's a good turn. Nothing changed there. Meanwhile, in terms of ships sunk last turn, we lost the tanker Iris, which is only worth 4 victory points, and we lost the corvette Time. So that's that. And not a lot else to report. The China thing is big enough in of its own right, but the China and the Western Australia thing aren't things that I have a ton more to do. They're kind of 2 isolated things, not things that are going to generate a huge conversation about it. So, we can kind of talk about it. He does have 12 fighters here at Mascar. He's got a further 21 at Kandari, as well as 51 bombers. We presume naval bombers at Kandari as well. We don't really have a lot left at Sorbet. We mainly evacuated that. Batavia's too far away. Ambion hasn't fallen yet. Actually, where did our subs go? Where's the S-37? S-37, where are you? Did you run away? No, seriously, where's the S-37? That was the one that took a crap ton of depth charges. Where did she go? Where did she go? The Nautilus needs to return to port. She is. She just has no fuel. The S-37 needs to return to port. Take me to you. She took a bunch of damage. She's at 30 system damage, 18 float. Yeah, you need to get the hell... Why does it not even show her? How does it not even show her? Where is she? All right. So there's the S-34 there, and there's the S-37. The S-37, I think we're going to have withdraw to the northeast coast here at Karenins. Did she even get there? Not even. What about Darwin? She can get to Darwin and refuel there. All right. Meanwhile, the S-41 has a modest amount of system and float damage. Still has some torpedoes, though, so we'll leave it there just to keep him busy. There was a Dutch sub that took a bunch of poundings as well. Let's actually go back to our ship list here. Yeah. So this guy needs to return to port also. Return him to Brisbane. He can make it there. He's got plenty of fuel. The Triton is where? Already at Townsville. The Perch is in T-138. So, Snapper. Yeah, you're going to return to Darwin also, and then I'm just going to figure out where to redirect you from Darwin after that. This is the kind of stuff I don't typically show you guys in these streams, just because it's kind of like, well, what's the point? Why are you showing me this? This is a little bit micromanagey for a live stream, right? You'll return to Serbia. You're okay. Seawolf's okay. Stingray's okay. Meanwhile, we also had that sub depth charged off the coast of Japan. The Trout is actually okay. Sulkin is actually okay. So the American subs off of northern Japan are fine. So yeah, that's probably about it for this turn. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off here for our most recent episode of War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition against XTRG. I hope you guys have enjoyed the series and continue to enjoy the series. There's a pretty big turn for multiple reasons, but that land battle in China was pretty instrumental, I think, in sort of shaping the future. We'll see, though. Until next time, though, guys, thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying again, until next time. Thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out.